Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Friday afternoon. We're going into the weekend, and I'm really excited because now I can actually make some NFL predictions for the first time in forever. That's not going to be what the first segment is going to be about, though. We're going to be covering in the first segment the Eagles matchup against the Commanders. It happened last night on Thursday Night Football, of course. I mean, why wouldn't I talk about that in the first segment? Then in the second segment, then we're going to get into the NFL predictions because, this is the first time that I'm ever doing this for NFL games, so we'll see how many I can get right, and we'll see if there's going to be another trend. When I was doing the basketball podcast, I would always get like 2 games at the very least wrong most of the time. And so we're going to see if that trend continues on with football, or maybe the football lords are going to have mercy on me today with these predictions. Now, in the third segment, we're going to do a recap of the NBA games that happened yesterday. And then we're going to do a prediction on the NBA games that are going to happen today. Because today in the NBA, it's going to be the second phase of the group play, I guess you could say. The second series of group play, that's a better word, for the NBA in-season tournament. They happen, I believe, every Tuesday and Friday, if I remember correctly, with the schedule. So we're going to go ahead and see what teams are going to be playing tonight in the NBA. And then in the fourth segment, we're going to be looking at a full injury list of key players that are going to be out for a rather prolonged period of time. I talked about it for like a split second in one of my other segments, but I actually want to do like a complete segment about it because I feel like I really skimmed over it and I didn't really highlight the significance of a lot of these players and just, the fact that a lot of these players are superstar players, like all-star caliber players, and they aren't going to see the court for a very long time. So I figured talking about that would be rather important. There's also a very, very special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment, so I really hope you guys stay tuned for that towards the end. And before I begin and start off with this first segment, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, or something that you've just been dying to share. We're all ears, and if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend you use Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. If Super Chat's not really your thing, you can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment, gsmcpodcast.net, and excuse me, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way as well. They really help the show. They make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So let's go right ahead and talk about this. I don't even know how to describe this game. This interesting game, because as I said before, already having problems with Canva and presenting my slides. Just give me 1 second, please, before I just try and open these up. But as I said before, if there was any games that I wish would result in a tie, it would be games within my own division, the NFC East. I'm a Giants fan. And I always pray that if the Eagles match up against Washington, or if the Cowboys match up against the Eagles, if the Cowboys match up against Washington, or if the Eagles match up against the Cowboys, I always, always, always hope that these games end in a tie. In my opinion, ties are like the worst thing in NFL football and in football period. There should never, ever be a tie. But if there was any time where I wish there was a tie, it would be when these teams play against each other. And I said in the last segment that if I was to pick any team to end up winning in this matchup, I would pick Philly. And turns out I was right. Philly, they ended up winning 26-18 against the Commanders. They were playing at home, so obviously, having that home field advantage is definitely something that helped them in this game. But the game started out really slow. And Philly did not score a single point in the first quarter. Washington did get on the board quickly in the first quarter with a touchdown, and the score was already 7-0 after the first quarter of play. And there was also there was a missed field goal coming in from the Eagles early in the first quarter. Washington had to punt, so not really as quickly as I alluded to before. But then the Eagles punted, and then right after the Eagles punted, then Washington ended up scoring a touchdown. Then it was back to Eagles punt, Washington punt, Eagles missed field goal, Washington punt, Eagles punt, Washington punt, Eagles finally make a field goal, Washington punts, Eagles make, and that's the end of the second half, excuse me. So, pretty boring first half, and not a lot of memorable moments in the first half of this game, I should say. But then the second half came, and then the flip switched. So, that was when both of the teams started scoring. Washington started out with a field goal, then the Eagles answered back with a field goal of their own. Washington punted, and then in the fourth quarter, that was really when Philadelphia realized that they were the Philadelphia Eagles, and they had to score touchdowns. So the first drive to open up the quarter, the Eagles score a touchdown. Then Washington decides to turn it over on downs, on a really unfortunate mistake there. But then the Eagles responded right back with a touchdown of their own. Then Washington, Jaden Daniels threw a terrible interception, and then the Eagles capitalized on it with another touchdown, and that effectively sealed the game for the Eagles. They scored on every single possession that they had the ball, and that was all she wrote for this game. The Commanders, they did try and put up a fight towards the end of the game. They went on a 15-play, 70-yard drive, which lasted 4 minutes, and they were able to get the touchdown off, as well as the two-point conversion to make the score 26-18. However, in order to win in this kind of scenario with the amount of time that was left on the clock, they would have to go for an onside kick. And with the new onside kick rules, literally telling the other team that you're going to go for an onside kick, even though there was no other option but to go for an onside kick, the Eagles recovered it, and they knelt it, and that was the end of the game. So a little bit of a fake comeback in the end there for Washington, but they really just ran out of time against the Eagles. And it seems like right now the Eagles, they have returned back to their ways of winning games, and they didn't really get a dominant win, like overall in this game, like how we were used to seeing them win these games with Jalen Hurts under center, and in that year when they won the Super Bowl, not won the Super Bowl, excuse me, when they almost won the Super Bowl. That's my bad. Imagine the Eagles winning another Super Bowl. That would be something. But Jalen Hurts, he didn't really play well in this game. I mean, he was all right. He didn't score touchdowns, like passing touchdowns, but he didn't throw interceptions either. He threw for 221 yards, and he also got one rushing touchdown. Of course he did. He's Jalen Hurts. But this game was all Saquon Barkley. 26 attempts, 146 yards, and 2 touchdowns to show for it. Without a doubt, one of the biggest reasons why Philly is in the position that they're in. In fact, the fans in the post-game interview where Saquon was talking, because they have this little sideline that a lot of the broadcasters, they end up talking and they do post-game interviews for Thursday Night Football. And all the Eagles fans, they were there watching Saquon, and they were chanting, "Thank you, Giants." I had to mention that because, it just shows how badly the Giants messed up. But aside from that, on Washington's side, Jaden Daniels did not have a really good game. As I mentioned before, he threw an interception. He did throw a touchdown, but that touchdown came in garbage time when the team was trying to mount a fake comeback. Because, expecting the team to score a touchdown in the final few seconds of a game and convert on a 2-point conversion is a very difficult task, and that's something that Washington just was unable to pull off. It would have been crazy if they pulled it off, but that's really, it's almost inconceivable for an outcome like that to happen. Now, how should I say this? Brian Robinson, excuse me, that's my bad, I messed up the names there. He ended the game with 1 touchdown, 63 yards. The receiving core, for some reason, Washington's receiving core, they were asleep in the first half. That's really the only word I can really use to describe how they played, because there were not many people in action only up until, the second half of the game when the scoring actually started. And I mean, Austin Eckler was really the only highlight of the entire first half, and like for Washington. And when you're playing like that and you have only one receiver against a team like Philly, when Philly is at home, it's not going to really go good for you. Now, with Jaden Daniels, this game has sort of confirmed like my thought process on Jaden Daniels and Washington overall as a team. And it might be a little bit early to say this, but Jaden Daniels and Washington, they only seem to win against really bad teams. And it's almost similar to how Dak usually only wins against really bad teams. Again, I'm not going to compare the two because I think Jaden Daniels is phenomenal, without a doubt, offensive rookie of the year. But when I look at their wins and the teams that they lost to this season, they have really only been able to beat incompetent teams. Now, let's go through their schedule. So, the Buccaneers, they ended up losing in week 1 to the Buccaneers. They lost 37-20. First game, I get it. But again, now the Buccaneers, when they were at that point in the Buccaneers season, all of them were healthy. They had Mike Evans. They had a number of other wide receivers that were also healthy for the team. There was also Chris Godwin in there. I already mentioned Mike Evans. Rachaad White was in there as well. And Mike Evans ended with 2 touchdowns in that game. And Baker Mayfield played phenomenally well in that game as well. They were all healthy, and it makes total sense that they ended up beating Washington because that was Jaden Daniels' first game. But aside from that, they are a really solid team, and in my opinion, they are a team that, they're second in the NFC South right now, and I feel like this team is much better than their record and also rather talented. And if it weren't for injuries, their record might be a little bit better. Now, the first game that they won was against the Giants. We know how bad the Giants are. Then they beat the Bengals. Now, at that point, the Bengals, they were not that good of a team. Their defense was absolutely atrocious, and their defense still is atrocious. And they were 0-3, well, 0-2 in this game, up until this game. And that game ended up pushing them to 0-3. So, not a very solid, well-rounded team. Like, they had weaknesses, and a huge weakness for the Bengals, and it still is a weakness, is the defense. And then the next game that they ended up winning was the Cardinals, another team that at that point had struggles on the defensive side of the ball. Now, it was only the defensive side of the ball. Now they've seemed to sort of revamp their defense. They have not allowed a touchdown in the last few games, to my knowledge. So that is very, very impressive. Like, considering how they gave up 42 points to the Commanders and now they come in with 3 games where they don't give up a touchdown, that is incredible work. Then they ended up beating the Browns, one of the worst teams in the NFL. They lose to the Ravens, one of the better teams in the NFL. They beat the Panthers, one of the worst teams in the NFL. The Bears, not the best team, rather mediocre. In fact, I think with the coach that they had, the offensive coordinator that they had, they were not all that good. And then they also beat the Giants again. They lose to the Steelers, and now they lose to the Eagles. So it seems like Washington is only really playing well against incompetent teams. So that's sort of my opinion on Washington right now. And I mean, the Eagles, now, ever since they beat the Giants, because of course, they ended up playing phenomenal football. They've been playing phenomenal football for a while these past few weeks now. So I wasn't really surprised with this outcome. Again, they completely destroyed the Cowboys. Thank you so much. They beat the Jaguars without Trevor, I believe, in this game. I believe Trevor was already out. Nope, Trevor was in this game, and he threw 2 interceptions. Of course he did. The Bengals, they beat the Bengals. The Bengals did not have a solid defense. They beat the Giants, and they really completely wiped the floor with majority of these teams. They've been winning these games. So I completely expected this outcome. But let's go ahead and test my luck in the next segment. So the next segment is going to be talking about NFL predictions. So I'm going to look at every single team that's going to be playing on Sunday. And we're also going to look at the Monday night game, and we're going to I'm going to predict and see how many games I end up getting right, and I'll talk about that on Monday as well. But we're going to go ahead and go into our predictions right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the NFL games that are going to be happening this Sunday, and also the Monday Night Football game that's going to be happening as well. And we're going to go ahead and predict to see which teams I think are going to emerge victorious in each of these matchups, and we're going to go ahead and start. But before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something that you've just been dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show. They make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And if you don't want to use Super Chat, you can always use the link displayed below the ticker, GSMC Sports Podcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or GSMC Podcast.net, excuse me. You can send in your comments and or donations that way as well. So let's go right ahead. Let's go ahead and talk about all of these games. Now, I should note the teams that have a bye week in Week 11. So the Cardinals aren't going to be playing. Neither are the Panthers. The Giants, thank the Lord, aren't playing. And the Bucks are also not playing. So these are the teams. They all have a bye week in Week 11. And so let's go ahead and dive right into this, to these predictions. So for the first game that's on this list, we have the Packers going up against the Bears. I think this is a pretty easy pick. The Packers, not only are they a better team than the Bears, in my opinion, but they just seem to always, I kid you not, always beat the Bears. It doesn't matter how badly they've been playing throughout the previous weeks. It doesn't matter who they have at quarterback. It genuinely does not matter. They will always stomp on the Bears, and they will always end up beating them. And I think this game is no exception to that rule. It's one of those things that's almost guaranteed every single year in the NFL. It's like the Bears, they always lose to the Packers. It's the same thing with, like, the Giants always losing to the Cowboys or the Giants always losing to the Eagles. It's like it's the same sort of principle. Like we all completely expect this to happen. So I'm picking the Packers in this one. Not only that, they're also 5.5-point favorites in this matchup. The Bears do play at home, but again, that doesn't really matter. The Packers are easily going to beat the Bears, in my opinion. Next game on this list, we have the Rams going up against the Patriots. They also play at 1 o'clock. And, I mean, the Patriots, they are not a very good team. I will say that Drake May is a very, very good bright spot for this team. And I really, really wish they would have started him at the start of the season, rather than starting Jacoby Brissett at the start of the season, because they've essentially ruined their whole season by starting Jacoby Brissett. And I totally understand the logic behind it. You don't want to get Drake May injured behind that horrendous O-line. But at the end of the day, Drake May has shown that the Pats seem to be a lot more successful with him under center. I mean, they completely destroyed the Bears 19-3. They almost won against the Titans if it wasn't for the overtime. And then they also ended up beating the Jets the week prior in week 8. So, they're not really that solid of a team. I think the Rams, despite the fact that a lot of the players are injured, they're going to be rather solid against the Patriots, and there's nothing that the Patriots will be able to do to stop them. That's my opinion. Now, the next team on going up against each other, the next game, is the Browns going up against the Saints. Now, the Saints, they're a very, very tricky team. Same with the Browns. I mean, the way I see it, the Browns, it's like you either get good Jameis Winston or you get bad Jameis Winston. And there's really no in between with him. So I have no idea exactly how well he's going to play. I also don't know how well Derek Carr is going to play. In fact, I read online, someone said that Derek Carr is a phenomenal loser, which is honestly the most accurate thing you could say about Derek Carr. He would have these games where he looks absolutely amazing, and then he'll have these games where he puts up absolute stinkers. And similar to the Browns with Jameis Winston, I have no idea which one of it is going to be. So this is a really, really difficult prediction for me to make. I'm going to go with the Saints on this one, mainly because I just don't believe in the Browns, and I don't think the Browns really have it in them to get many more wins. I really don't. But again, maybe they'll get good Jameis Winston in this night. I mean, they did somehow beat the Ravens. Again, somehow. It was a miracle that they ended up winning. But again, this is the Browns. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL. I don't expect them to win against the Saints. But again, we could also end up getting bad Derek Carr in this matchup and just completely messing up the predictions entirely. Next game on this matchup, and the next game that's happening at 1 o'clock, is the Dolphins going up against the Raiders. And the Dolphins, they're going to have home field advantage. They also, I believe they're going to have Tua Tagovailoa. I have no idea whether or not he's going to get injured in this game. For some reason, he really, really likes diving head first. If you guys watched the previous game that the Dolphins played against the Rams, he literally tried to tackle somebody with his head, which was absolutely ridiculous. I was scared for his life, but I think the Dolphins are going to end up coming out on top. The Raiders, they're not a competent team. They're just not it. And I don't really think that the Raiders are going to pull off a win against the Dolphins. And next game on this list, the Lions, they're going up against the Jags. Now, they don't have Trevor Lawrence, so that means they're probably going to have to put up with Mac Jones. And I think the Jaguars' season, and I think they've realized that their season is already lost. So I think the Lions are easily going to come out and win this game. The Lions play at home in this matchup. I don't think it's nearly going to be as bad as the previous game that they played. Now, assuming Jared Goff doesn't turn into Jared Goof, this should be an easy win for the Lions. Next matchup, the Vikings against the Titans. The Vikings, I feel like they're going to win. Regardless of how bad Sam Darnold plays, they somehow end up winning the game in the end. They have fantastic skill players around almost all of the positions. I mean, we all know Jay Jettas. He is absolutely insane, and I doubt he's going to slow down anytime soon, especially against the Titans. Next is the Ravens and the Steelers. This is going to be a very, very competitive game. This is also, I believe, a fight for their division standings, by the way. Yes, the Steelers, right now, they're ranked number 1. If they can beat the Ravens, then they can hold on to that number 1 spot in the AFC North. But I have faith in Lamar Jackson. I have faith in Lamar Jackson in the regular season. This regular season that he's producing is, without a doubt, in my opinion, an MVP caliber season. I believe he's going to finish this season with the MVP. With the help of Derrick Henry against the Steelers, I think the Ravens are going to come out on top. This is going to be a very, very good game. Probably the best game at 1 o'clock, to be honest. And then there's the Jets going up against the Colts. Now, Anthony Richardson was renamed the starter, so I believe now they have a much better of a chance to go up against the Jets. I don't know. I really don't know. Like, the Jets, they've been playing absolutely abysmal, but I think they're due for a good game. But I really want to pick the Jets. I really do. But I have no idea which one. Like, my heart is saying pick the Jets, but my brain is saying pick the Colts. So it's like I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm just going to pick the Colts. I don't think I trust the Jets enough to do that. Next matchup is the Falcons going up against the Broncos. Now, I actually think that the Falcons are going to end up losing this matchup to the Broncos. For some reason, I just have a feeling. Kirk Cousins, he can never, ever, ever stray too far from having a 500 record. Can never stray too far. And right now, he's 2 games positive. So I don't see the Falcons winning against the Broncos in this matchup. I'm picking the Broncos. Next is the 49ers. They're going up against the Seahawks. The Seahawks have a really, really bad defense. CJ McCaffrey is back for the 49ers, and I think he's just going to run all over them. I'm not sure if it's going to be a blowout, but at the same time, Geno Smith has not really been playing that well. He's thrown 11 touchdowns, but also has thrown 10 interceptions. So I think the 49ers are easily going to win this one. Next is the Chiefs against the Bills. This game is probably the best game at 4 o'clock, like at around 4:25. So this game is going to determine whether or not Josh Allen actually has a chance of winning the MVP. If Josh Allen loses this game, I think he's completely out of the MVP race. If he wins this game, then his odds for winning the MVP this year are going to skyrocket, maybe even more so if Lamar Jackson ends up losing in the matchup against the Steelers. So this game is very, very important for Josh Allen. He plays at home. He's going up against the undefeated Chiefs. He has a chance to stop the Chiefs from winning games right here and right now, and now he has to perform. But I'm going to go with the Chiefs just because Patrick Mahomes, I understand he's not really playing all that well, but the Chiefs, they find a way to win in every single game that they played. It doesn't matter how bad they're playing. It doesn't matter what leads up to what events. They somehow find a way to win. And I think that trend is going to continue on, despite the fact that the Bills are an incredibly competent team. But this game is very important for Josh Allen. Next is the Bengals going up against the Chargers. Now, the Chargers, they're going to play at home. My gut is telling me to pick the Bengals because I don't really have that much faith in the Chargers and their offensive capabilities in this matchup. So I'm going to go on a limb and I'm going to go ahead and pick the Bengals. And last but certainly not least, definitely least, is Dallas going up against the Texans. Now, Dallas is going to lose. I think the Texans are going to easily win this. There's no way that the Dallas Cowboys are going to be able to win with the quarterback situation that they have. Assuming CJ Stroud does not put up a stinker in this matchup, I think the Texans easily have this one in the bag. The Cowboys, they're playing at home, but lucky for the Texans, the Cowboys have yet to win a game at home. In fact, funny stat, they are the only team in the NFL that has not gotten a home win this year. Not this season, this entire year. Even the Giants were able to win in the year of 2024. Not the Cowboys. So all luck is going against Dallas in this matchup, and I think the Texans are easily going to end up winning this game against Dallas. But we'll see how it goes. And I kid you not, if I hear some Cowboys fans saying, this is our year, we're going to the Super Bowl, I'm going to effectively lose it. So that's all that I have on these predictions for today. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the third segment where I do a quick NBA recap. It's going to be very, very quick because there was only one game to talk about. And then we're going to go into my predictions for the NBA in-season tournament matchups that are happening later tonight. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be looking at the NBA games that are going to be happening later on tonight, as well as recapping the NBA game that went down yesterday night. So the game that went down yesterday was Dallas going up against the Utah Jazz. I expected Dallas to come out and win this game, but they messed up at the very end. And in fact, more specifically, Luka messed up at the very end. Now, this game was, I wouldn't really say, I mean, it came down to the wire, but the Utah Jazz, they almost blew it. So in the third quarter, they completely outscored the Dallas Mavericks 38-21. But then in the fourth quarter, Dallas was slowly closing in and they were able to make a nice comeback and tie the game up eventually. However, in the final seconds of the game, Luka Doncic, on a simple screen and roll play, an off-ball screen and roll play, I should say, just did not play defense. That's really the only way I can really describe what happened, because it was a hiccup. Like, it was a very, very bad hiccup. Like, Luka was straight up just standing there, and the defender saw that he wasn't paying attention. Not the defender. The player on offense saw that he wasn't really paying attention. I believe it was John Collins who ended up making that backdoor cut to the basket. Let me go ahead and check just to make sure that I'm not spewing lies. Yes, it was. John Collins, he ended up making the game-winning dunk off of a Jordan Clarkson assist, and mainly because Luka Doncic was sleeping on defense. This has been a problem with Luka Doncic and through the most part of his career. In fact, throughout the entirety of his career. He's fantastic on offense, but on defense, he's really not that good. In fact, he's really, really bad on defense. But you live with that because he drops 37 points. However, unfortunately, these 37 points were in vain because it did end up in a loss. It was a 2-point loss, and I mean 37, 7, and 9, despite the fact that he dropped all of these numbers, I can't help but not blame Luka Doncic for losing this game, because if he would have at least played like a little bit of defense and paid a little bit of attention, then John Collins would never have gotten that open for a dunk. A basket that late in the game, like a dunk that late in the game, a wide open dunk is never acceptable. And you have to at least make their chances of scoring a little bit more difficult in the final minutes of a game. Like, at least if you're not going to play defense the whole game, sure, but put some effort in the final minutes of the fourth quarter. He obviously took blame for that and said it was a really bad mess up. I can't say the word that he said, but it was not a very good sign for Luka Doncic and his defense. And that's really the only thing that Luka needs to improve, because again, 37 points is 37 points, but again, that lack of defense in the final minutes of a game is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable coming in from Luka. There was no Kyrie in this matchup, so I guess it makes sense that the Utah Jazz ended up beating the Dallas Mavericks because, they did not have their second best player. But fear not, they had Klay Thompson. And oh wait, he went 6 for 17 and 5 for 13 from 3. So far, not a very solid year for Klay. I mean, it's really, I don't know. I really don't know how to feel about Klay right now. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because it's still rather early. But again, I don't really think you need to get much team chemistry when you're just doing the same thing that you've been doing on the Golden State Warriors, which is shooting the ball. Like, his three-point efficiency is more or less the same as it was last season, but it's like, again, it's a little bit of a downgrade from what he was previously in Golden State. And I understand that's going to come, players are going to eventually be on the decline as they get older, unless you're LeBron. But I don't know. Like these games, a lot of these games that I see, they're very, very inefficient coming in from Klay. But again, maybe this is because I'm always used to Klay Thompson's standards and Klay Thompson's efficiency. Remember, I had to watch the Golden State dynasty with Steph, Klay, Draymond, and Kevin Durant. I mean, those guys, they made the finals for like 5 straight years or something like that, and they were just unbelievable in that span. Like, it's just it's so uncharacteristic to see Klay Thompson shoot this inefficiently in a lot of these games. And I don't want to say he was the big reason why they ended up losing, because again, I feel like Luka Doncic's defense is the biggest culprit for this loss, but who knows what they would have done in overtime. Now, on the Jazz's side, John Collins, he ended with 28 points, along with the game-winning dunk, so there's that. Colin Sexton had 16 points. Keontae George had 14 points. And Lauri Markkanen, not really living up to his ridiculous contract that he signed with the Utah Jazz. I mean, he's only averaging 16 points per game, along with 6 rebounds and 2 assists. So again, not really living up to that expensive contract that I thought he was going to live up to. But aside from that, they ended up winning a game. This is a win for the Jazz. They're 3-8 in the season, so, not really much to be expected from there. But this is not a very good loss coming in from Dallas, but I'm sure they're going to fine-tune it as the season goes on. Now, let's go into the predictions for the games that are happening tonight. Now, these games are, depending on how you look at the in-season tournament, they're either important or they're completely unimportant. And the mix, there's a huge, split in opinions for what people think about the NBA in-season tournament. Some people think that it's unnecessary, that it's just padding, and it's completely useless at the end of the day. Other people, like me, actually like it. They like how it's a little bit more competitive. I'm not necessarily sure I could say I like the designs of some of the courts, but again, I think it adds something more to the NBA season, something that all of us can look forward to. And I mean, I can't really complain with that. So I'm just going to go ahead and bring up this graphic again. These are the standings, in each of the groups for the NBA in-season tournament and the NBA Cup. And let's go over the games. So the Knicks, they're going to be playing against the Brooklyn Nets. This is going to be a subway battle in New York. And the game starts at 7:30. I believe that the Knicks, actually no, the Magic are the number 1 team in Eastern Group A, in this group right here, and the Knicks are second. And the only reason why they're second is because of a point differential. And let's see, the Magic, they do end up playing tonight. They do play against the 76ers. Is Joel Embiid playing tonight? I don't know. He probably should be playing tonight, considering how this is an in-season tournament game. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing tonight. But again, they're playing in Orlando, so I have no idea whether or not Joel Embiid's going to be playing in this matchup. I really, really don't know. But if the Knicks end up winning, then they can take the number 1 spot in Eastern Group A. Now, the Nets, they have not played an in-season tournament game yet. This would be the first one that they played. But the 76ers and the Magic, they've already played an in-season tournament game. So that would mean that if the Magic end up winning, then they'll move up to number 1. And if the 76ers lose, they'll go all the way to the bottom at the Eastern Conference Group A standings. I think the Knicks are going to end up winning in this matchup against the Nets. I just think the Knicks are a much better team. Karl-Anthony Towns, by the way, happy birthday, has been playing really, really well for the Knicks recently. And, the team just has to get it together. But I think against the Nets, they're going to be able to do enough. Now, the next game, probably the most popular game that's going to be going on, LeBron against Victor, or AD against Victor, if you want to be a little bit more accurate. The Lakers, they're going to be playing the Spurs. I'm going to be picking the Lakers in this matchup. I just think that they're going to have much better performances from the rest of their surrounding players as opposed to the Spurs. And I'm not going to get into what the standings are, because if I do that for every single team, then I think we're going to run out of time rather quickly. So I think that the Lakers, they're going to end up beating the Spurs. I believe this is also the first game, first in-season tournament game for the Lakers. Yes, it is. And let's see, did the Spurs play on Tuesday? No, they did not. So this is the first game for both of these teams. So we'll see where they end up getting ranked. Now, next game, the Golden State Warriors, they're going up against the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, Ja Morant's probably not going to be playing in this game. More on him later. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Warriors. The Warriors are 9-2. They're looking like one of the better teams in the NBA right now. Steph Curry, he had a really good game against Boston. I know that was a while ago, but still, this team, the Golden State Warriors, are looking fantastic, unfortunately. But I'm just going to predict them to beat the Grizzlies in this matchup. I already said that I actually talked about how the 76ers are matching up against the Magic. Now, depending on if Joel Embiid plays, I'd pick the Sixers if Joel Embiid is playing. If he's not playing, then the Orlando Magic are going to end up winning this matchup. And I think the game is going to be close, but I'm picking the Magic in this one. Next, the Raptors are going to go up against the Pistons. And I think that I never picked Detroit, but I'm going to go ahead and pick Detroit in this matchup right now. The Raptors, they're 2-10. They're not a very good team. And, I mean, primarily because, Scotty Barnes is out with an injury. Grady Dick has been fantastic for the Raptors, but, again, I don't think it's enough for the Pistons and Cade Cunningham. Next, we have the Heat going up against the Pacers. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Pacers. I think the Pacers are going to be able to outscore the Heat really easily. I think Tyler Hero is probably going to have a pretty good game, but I'm going to go with the Pacers. Next, the Cavs, they're going up against the Bulls. The Cavs have yet to lose a single game. I don't think that trend is going to stop now, and I'm going to go ahead and pick the Cavs in this matchup. Next, the Wizards, they're going up against the Atlanta Hawks. I think I'm going to go ahead and pick the Hawks in this matchup. And the Hawks, they're going to play at home. Now, whether or not they're going to have Trae Young in this matchup is still unclear, but we'll see again. Maybe he's going to be eligible to play in this matchup. Regardless whether he is or not, I still think that the Hawks are the much better team. Next, the Nuggets, they're going to go up against the Pelicans. I think the Nuggets are going to easily prevail in this matchup. They got Jamal Murray back. Nikola Jokic is a monster. There's no real dominant center or defensive center that the Pelicans have that can actually be able to stop Jokic. So, he's going to dominate. Next, the Suns, they're going up against the Oklahoma City Thunder. I really want to pick the Thunder in this matchup. Both of the teams have significant injuries to two players. Kevin Durant is out, as well as Chet Holmgren. Again, more on these players later. And I think OKC still has the leg up in this matchup. I think they have much more talent than the Phoenix Suns do, and I think the Thunder, they're going to end up winning, especially with that home court advantage. Then Houston going up against the Clippers. Now, I think Houston, they do have much more talent, but Norman Powell has been absolutely insane. He's been arguably the X factor for this Clippers matchup, and this Clippers team, excuse me. But I don't know. I think I'm going to go with Houston in this matchup. Next, the Timberwolves, they're going up against the Kings. I'm actually going to pick the Kings in this matchup because the Timberwolves, they recently lost twice to the Blazers, and nobody's talking about it. I kid you not. Nobody's talking to the fact that the Timberwolves ended up losing to the Blazers, and they got blown out in one of those games as well. So I think that the Kings are going to end up coming out victorious in this matchup, but that's just me. So let me know in the comments what you guys think of these predictions, and we'll see whether or not they end up being accurate towards the end of the day. And now we're going to go ahead and go into the fourth segment where I talk about all of the players who are injured in the NBA season. Now, I skimmed over it before, but I'm going to actually have a segment talking about all of these players right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be looking at NBA stars actually, who have been injured and are most likely going to be sidelined for a couple of weeks, and the significance of their losses for their team. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter segment just because we are a little bit low on time. But before I talk about these NBA All-Stars, let's go over to the NFL. And an All-Star that's going to be out for a significant amount of time is the one and only Dak Prescott. Yeah, I only just did that because I really don't like the Cowboys, and I wanted to remind them that this guy's out, which means that there's no hope. And even then, when he's in, there's still no hope. Just wanted to remind you. So let's go ahead and go into this actual fourth segment. So first player we're going to start with is Ja Morant. Now, obviously, best player on the Memphis Grizzlies, without a doubt. The most impactful player for this team, without a doubt as well. He has a hip injury. He will be sidelined for multiple weeks. The amounts, how many weeks it's going to be, rather unclear. So could be maybe a few, could be a little bit more than a few, and it's really just is dependent on how Ja Morant feels and whether or not he's able to play. So, this is not really that good for the Grizzlies. However, I will say that one of the positives is that, this could allow the rest of the role players on the team to try and step up, and maybe Memphis can go ahead and find that second option that they need if they haven't found it already. And it could also give Zach Edey some time to develop his game as well. And, Zach Edey right now, he's been playing, again, this draft class is rather weak, but compared to everyone else in the draft class, he's been he's been solid. I will say, he's one of the very few rookies that I am not disappointed with in the draft. Alexander Sarr is one of them. Zachary Rasacher is another one of them. Reed Shepard, another player that I'm rather disappointed in. But Zach Edey, he's been a very pleasant surprise. He's also shooting the three a lot more, way more than he did in college, by the way. And he's actually hitting them at a very efficient rate. So I may have just spoiled his secret, but, I'm sure you guys, if you watch the game, you'll see. Now, next player, rather significant player, went out pretty early for the Magic after dropping ridiculous 59 points. Paolo Banchero, or somewhere around 59 points. It was a while ago. But Paolo Banchero, he is suffering a right torn oblique, and he's going to be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks. So the timetable on him is also rather unclear. So depending on how bad the injury is, we have no idea whether or not he's going to return for the season. Hopefully he does, so that way, the Magic have some hope. This man, incredibly underrated. One of the most underrated first overall picks in the entire history of the NBA. He is phenomenal. But because he's playing in Orlando, he's not getting nearly as much recognition. He's just got to win a playoff series first. And then, boom, the media is going to be all over him. Next, pretty common player to get injured, Kevin Durant. He is suffering a left calf strain and will be out at least 2 weeks for the Phoenix Suns. Now, normally, if you're out for 2 weeks, I wouldn't really say this is a big deal. But because you are in the Western Conference, the competition is much greater in that conference than it is in the Eastern Conference. So you really, really cannot afford to, drop a lot of games, because you might end up dropping in the standings, and now you're going to have to play catch-up. I understand that it's still early in the season, but this has sort of been a common trend with Kevin Durant. He's been getting injured a lot mid-season, rather, real recently. It's been happening since he was on the Brooklyn Nets, and it happened twice when he was on the Brooklyn Nets, actually, maybe even more than twice, and now it's happening here in Phoenix. So again, really not all that ideal for Kevin Durant trying to stay healthy, but again, he's Kevin Durant, so I'm sure he's going to come back at 100%. Not sure what he'll do in the postseason, but we'll have to see. Next player, Kawhi Leonard. I'm sure you all know that Kawhi Leonard has been injured for majority of this season, and he's going to be sidelined for multiple weeks, depending on how quickly he recovers. We have no idea whether or not he's going to even make a return for this season, but considering how the Clippers are being a competitive team despite Kawhi Leonard, I can only imagine what's going to happen when he is on the squad. But we'll have to see how that goes. But he's going to be sidelined for multiple weeks. Again, the Clippers, they aren't really playing that bad of basketball, considering how the expectations for them were incredibly low after losing Paul George. Now it seems like they have higher expectations than the 76ers, which really says a lot. Now, next player on this list, Zion Williamson, one of the most disappointing picks in the draft. I mean, he had so much hype going in at number 1 overall, and really the biggest problem was the stuff off the court, being able to stay on the court. He hasn't played a majority of the games for the Pelicans, and he seems to be a little bit of a waste, but I desperately want Zion to succeed in this league. I really hope that he gets healthy, and I really hope that he can, have a prolonged career, so that way we can see this man in action throughout an entire regular season. But he always gets injured. Now he has a left hamstring strain and is out indefinitely, so no idea whether or not he's going to return for this season. Next, Lonzo Ball. He got injured before the season started again. He has a wrist injury and he played 5 games before being out. So again, really early in the season, Lonzo Ball got injured, and he's another player that's been rather injury prone. Now, the expectations on him are nowhere near as high as they were when the Lakers drafted him, but still, he's a very solid player. I'm going to have to speed through all of this because I am running out of time. Kristaps. We already know Kristaps, he's been out with a foot injury. He's targeting a return in December, so there's no change on the timetable for that. Again, the Celtics, they are a really good team, so it's not like they necessarily need him, but, it wouldn't hurt to have him. Next, Chris Middleton. He's out with an ankle injury, and he's going to be out indefinitely. This is obviously a huge blow to the Milwaukee Bucks, who are already struggling in the regular season to begin with. And now with the threat of Giannis potentially requesting a trade, and Damian Lillard not really playing well, and the amazing coaching duo of Doc Rivers and Darvin Ham, doesn't really look like the Bucks have much going for them this season, but again, it's still young, so we'll see how it goes. Next, the most recent injury, actually, Chet Holmgren, I believe. He has a right lilac hip fracture. He's going to be out for 8 to 10 weeks, but on a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're a very competent team. The only real lacking with this team, again, is now, like, with the lineup that they went out with in the last matchup that they played, they did end up winning, but the lineup is really small, so they have to rely a lot on three-point shots. And with SGA being the primary ball handler, I'm not entirely sure how I really feel with SGA taking a lot of threes. However, he does know how to score the ball. Don't get me wrong. He knows how to score the ball. But not having Chet Holmgren there is definitely a huge disadvantage for this team. I don't really think it's going to hinder them all that much, but still. Next, Joel Embiid. Of course, if I'm making an injury video, I have to include Joel Embiid. Left knee management, as they call it. He did return Tuesday from his suspension, but of course he did not play in the back-to-back game. So, he's going to be he's odd. I'm sorry to say this, but it's like he's going to be rather odd. I have no idea whether or not he's going to be in a game. I have no idea whether or not he's not going to be in a game. The timetable is unknown, honestly. It seems like he's only going to play when he feels like it, which I can't really give a timetable for that. Next is CJ McCollum. He's out with a right adductor strain, and it's going to be a week-to-week thing, so not really that bad, but again, it's rather detrimental for the Pelicans, who are already suffering from injuries. More on that later. Well, I already alluded to Zion, but there's still one more player who's also injured for the Pelicans, and it's starting to look like trading for that player wasn't really the best move. More on that later. Tyrese Maxey, he's out with a right hamstring strain. He's going to be reevaluated in a week, so should be sometime next week where he gets reevaluated, and we'll see what the timetable is on him for his return. No idea. Next is Aaron Gordon. He has a right calf strain. He's going to be sidelined for multiple weeks, and again, unclear on the timetable. DeJounte Murray, this was the player that I was alluding to before when I was talking about the Pelicans suffering injuries. He has a left hand fracture and is supposed to be out for 4 to 6 weeks. And again, timetable a little bit unclear, so no idea when he's going to actually make his return to the Pelicans and to the NBA. But again, it is a really, really big blow for the Pelicans because They traded him, and they were expected to be a competent team in the Western Conference, but now that all of them, basically all of them, I mean CJ, Zion, and DeJounte all come down with injuries, it just completely just blows up the entire plan. Next, one of my favorite players for fantasy, Scotty Barnes. He suffers an orbital fracture and is going to be out indefinitely, so no timetable on his return. And last but not least, Jimmy Butler. He has been out with a sprained ankle and is going to be day-to-day. Now, you notice, these are a lot of superstars. And these are a lot of all-star caliber players and all-star talent that's already out early in the NBA. So, I mean, it's a good thing that I guess you could take it as it being a good thing that they're out early and they're not out during like the postseason or something like that. But still, it's a sad sight to see how so many NBA players have now succumbed to all of these injuries. But that's all that I really have to say on this segment. So now we're going ahead and going into the fifth segment, where it's actually a very surprising segment because LeBron and Netflix are getting sued. So we're going to talk about that in the fifth segment right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the fifth and the final segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, we are going to talk about a very surprising topic because I honestly did not expect this to happen, like at all. The news literally broke out earlier this morning, I believe, at least to me. But this article that I'm looking at, it was written a couple of days ago. So, LeBron and Netflix are getting sued. And why are they getting sued? Well, they're apparently a, quote, disgruntled filmmaker who is accusing the pair of trying to steal from one of his scripts to use as a basis of their own basketball movies. Now, what exactly does that mean? So LeBron and Netflix, LeBron and Netflix, it's not a really new thing. There's a documentary going on called The Starting Five, and LeBron is in that series called The Starting Five. But this is a completely different thing on Netflix that was made by LeBron James and along with Netflix called Resball. Now, this filmmaker is claiming that LeBron James and his production company stole some of his scripts to incorporate scenes into Resball. This is what the filmmaker is saying, and this is why he is suing LeBron. Now, whether these are true, whether these end up being proven false, no idea, but these are just the reports, right? So I'm going to go ahead and read this article. Again, this is all on the article. This is nothing to do with me. I'm not claiming anything. I don't know about this nearly enough, but this is just what the article is saying. So, Rob Grabo, who is the filmmaker, filed a 25-page lawsuit in a federal court in California on Thursday, November 14th, in which he says a script titled The gift of the game was used by Netflix and LeBron James to create Resball, released in 2024. The writer's story centered around a Native American high schooler who aims to win a state title and covers themes such as issues surrounding community, race relations, poverty, sharing it with the pair, who he then claims ripped it off. Those are his claims. Ripped it off. Grabo points to several similarities, such as the ending, as well as elements in two works, quote, elements in two works, plot, theme, dialogue, mood, setting, pace, characters, and sequence of events, as breach of contract as he sues for copyright infringement and breach of contract with an amount unspecified. So that is the report, and that's what's going on with Netflix and LeBron. So what is Resball about? So obviously it was produced by LeBron James and the co-creator of Reservation Dogs 2021 to 2023, the latter of which is a comedy drama centered around 4 indigenous teenagers in rural Oklahoma as they spend their days hanging out and committing crimes. This is what the article says. This is not me. It was released on Netflix exclusively on September 27th and was directed by Sidney Freeland, receiving a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes rating from 32 critic responses, as well as a 69 out of 100 Metacritic score. The synopsis reads, in heart of Chuska, New Mexico, and the Chuska Warriors, a high school basketball team rich in Native American heritage, face their greatest challenge. After the loss to their star player, the team must unite like never before to keep their dreams of a state championship alive. This is more than just a game. It's a journey of resilience and unity, a true underdog story deeply rooted in Native American culture, end quote. So the filmmaker is suing LeBron for allegedly stealing the idea of the scenes in this film and the dialogue and all sorts of things that go into what makes a movie. Now, I haven't seen this movie. I also haven't seen the movie that the filmmaker is talking about. But that is the development in this, I don't even know how to say this, I guess debacle with LeBron and Netflix and the filmmaker. So that's all that I'm really going to talk about. Again, this is just a shorter segment, a smaller segment, because again, I do not want to get in trouble. And I also don't really feel like there's any more evidence that I can really bring about without getting in trouble, right? Like, I can't really say much about this other than what the lawsuit is about and why the lawsuit is happening. But, this is still basketball news, so I still have to sort of cover it. But again, it's very odd. I never would have, of all the things that LeBron would accomplish in his career, and of all the things that could ever happen to LeBron, I would have never, ever expected him to get sued for allegedly copying someone else's idea. So I have no idea whether or not these are going to be proven true. I have no doubt that this is going to get settled outside of court. But again, I got no idea. So for now, we just have to wait. But this is what's going on. And I don't want to say anything more about this because, again, I really don't want to get in trouble. It's not necessarily because I am a LeBron fan. Not only do I not think that LeBron would do such a thing, but again, I have no proof and there's no real concrete evidence to determine which side is right and which side is wrong. So I'm just going to say it how it is and say that he's just getting sued. It's that simple. Now, again, whether the charges get dropped, whether they figure out that it's not that LeBron wasn't stealing, whether they figured out that LeBron was stealing is a completely different thing. but I will give an update on the lawsuit if anything sort of unfolds with that. But it does seem like it's a big deal. Now, I hope this isn't a distraction for the Lakers and their season, and I hope this doesn't necessarily distract LeBron. And because, I mean, the Lakers so far, they've won the last few games that they've been playing. They have a game tonight. So let's hope that this lawsuit doesn't really affect the Lakers and their season going forward. Because the way I see it, this is another major distraction that the Lakers can't really afford to have. But that's all I'm going to be talking about with this segment. That's all that I have to say for the show. So thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, or something that you've just been dying to share. We're all ears. You really want your comment and or question to get noticed? I recommend using Super Chat. Just click on the $sign below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Super Chat's not really your thing. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker as well, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Either or really helps the show. That's all that I have today on this segment. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to tune in to Sunday football and Sunday night football, because why not? I'm going to be covering the outcomes of all of those games and talking about whether or not my predictions were correct or incorrect. Obviously, I will not be able to watch every single one of those games on Sunday going into Monday, but I'll try to watch the most I can, and we'll go ahead and get ready to talk about that for Monday. So, thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.